you for coming back and joining Lunch with Gina. We're really happy to have you here today with us. And last time we were together, we talked about the role of diversity in independent school culture. And today we are speaking with Delia Farquharson. She is our guest. She is the host of the talk show Discussions with Delia, the digital talk show. And she happens to be our a social and emotional advisor at RIISE, licensed clinical social worker. And you can find out more about the weekly Discussions with Delia on her Facebook page, Delia Positively Speaking, and on her Twitter page at Discussion, without an S, Delia, Discussion Delia. So I want to thank you, Delia, for being with us today.
My pleasure, Gina. Always my pleasure to work with you. You're such an inspiration, so it's always my pleasure.
Oh, thank you. You are too. And what's so inspirational about you is that you are able to speak to our network of parents of color and our independent schools about things that are important as we navigate independent school education. And as we talk about school choice, many families right now are waiting on the decision to come in from the schools that they've applied to for 2016-17. And as they wait, we continue to talk about what the expectations are on the other side and the possibilities of choosing an educational environment that is relatively safe, physically safe, right? There's excellent education going on. At the same time, there's a lot of social and emotional development happening. And you, once again, will be facilitating a workshop at one of our member schools, Birch, Wathen, Lenox School, this Wednesday, tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And the title of the workshop is Sticks and Stones Revisited. I think we can all recall Sticks and Stones Can Break My Bones, but what is it? Names Will Never Hurt Me.
Right, that's it.
Yeah, that's it. Good memory. And when we think about our environments, we do feel our children are relatively safe physically, but bullying is something that's been going on forever. It still happens, and as much as our schools try to work very hard to provide environments for positive growth and experiences, things like bullying can happen, things like microaggressions can happen. That's a new word out that still parents are trying to figure their head around. So I have a few questions for you in anticipation of the workshop. And also just to support the network in what they may be experiencing or what to look out for.
Okay.
So I guess I would like you to kind of define what is bullying today and what does it look like?
So bullying today, bullying as defined by the Department of Health is unwanted aggressive behavior towards an individual by another individual or a group of individuals. And it's likely to be repeated or is being repeated, right? That places the young person at harm. And that harm is not just defined as physical harm, because in this digital age, harm is defined as emotional harm or physical harm. So bullying speaks to unwanted aggressive behavior from one person or persons towards another, and places that person at risk of harm and is likely to be repeated.
Okay.
So it's not a one-time thing. Bullying is not a one-time thing.
It occurs over time. Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's really good to check in with our children about what their days are like, what their interactions are like, and really listen for that repetitiveness.
Right.
And check in particularly at school, check in with our school policy. So I guess there should never be a fear of questioning whether or not bullying is going on and incorporating the support of the school, right, Delia?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. It's really important, Gina, and you've hit on one of the essential points, which is checking in, using open-ended questions to check in with your children, and then being careful listeners, really being active listeners as to what's going on. Is there a theme to that story, right? Are there names that come up over and over? Is your child demonstrating behavior that's new, where they don't want to go to school or they're expressing some kind of illness when it's time to go to school? So it's really important to kind of tune in to any change in behavior and listening when you ask the question.
So let's talk about microaggressions. So I think many of us are familiar with the term bullying. Microaggression seems to be the new buzzword, and I think you'll define it for us, because I think it's a pretty interesting definition.
Right. So as it's defined in the literature, right? Microaggression is a brief and commonplace daily verbal, behavioral, or environmental indignity, whether it's intentional or not, that is visited up on someone, and is communicated in a hostile or derogatory way. So it could be a slight or an insult. And the important thing to note, that which is different from bullying, is that it can be intentional or unintentional, right? And it can be, sometimes microaggressions come across as like innocent questions or even jokes, probably. But when you really examine the exchange, then you see that there are insults layered into it, or it's meant to somehow make the other person feel less than.
Mm-hmm. And so, tell me the impact of microaggressions. Well, let me try and give an example. So one that I think I used to hear a lot was, "Wow, you speak so intelligently."
Right.
And I think many people of color, when they hear that, are like, "Well, wow, what did you expect?" Would you consider that an example of a microaggression?
Absolutely, absolutely. So somebody will say, for example, and I'm sure you've heard it, because I certainly have, "You sound white," right? Or somebody might also say, as someone who's from the Caribbean, "You have an accent," right? That's making a distinction with the person, how the person speaks. And by making that distinction, it's suggesting an otherness. And I think that's where the slight might come in, because then it forces the person to whom that's directed to defend that position, or to defend how they speak, or to explain. And that can create discomfort.
And that goes along the lines of race or culture or gender as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you're the only woman in a meeting, and perhaps at the beginning of the meeting, you're asked to take the notes.
Right.
Right. And so what is that all about? Intentional or unintentional, it does have an impact, and our schools are talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it's almost the insidious nature of it, like, did I hear that right? And if it's not bullying and I haven't heard it over and over and over again from this particular person, do you feel it's just as impactful?
Absolutely. I think that it really is. Yeah, it's, whether or not it's, and that's the thing with microaggression as opposed to bullying. Bullying, in the definition I talked about, the act being repeated or being likely to be repeated. The microaggression can be repeated, but it may be just like someone saying, "Oh, suggesting that you don't belong here, or you're somehow different from the group." And that one exchange can have such a significant impact in terms of making you feel, like you're not validated, or distorting the way you see yourself as part of any group. And so it's really important to recognize that and to act on it as soon as you recognize it.
Mm-hmm. Well, so how do you act on it when I think some people feel, I hear it often, I've even heard it from a parent in a parent meeting, well, we're really trying to raise resilient children and help them develop a tough skin, and they're getting ready to go out into the world. So these slights, I don't know if we could even term a microaggression as a slight, but a lot of people see it as a slight, and just, keep it moving, get over it, or maybe directly say something to the person. Maybe can you explain that? I'm not sure I understand.
Right. Clarifying.
Yeah, can you please clarify? Would you say that that's a really great way to kind of nip it in the bud and move on, or do you think it requires more than that?
I think it's particularly, Gina, like we said before, that it's no less painful if it's whether it's intentional or not. But I think it's really important to use it as a teaching opportunity for the individual who may be, presenting this distorted view and does not realize that this distorted view is painful, or it is, may cause me to feel different or raise self-doubt within me. So I think it's important to address it right away. As soon as you recognize it, to say, to ask a clarifying question like, what does that really mean? Or to explain using an I statement, for example, how that makes you feel. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you're trying to, point out my differences. Is that what I'm sensing? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Or, do you mean to, try to exclude me from this group? Kind of doing it in a way that's not necessarily aggressive, but I think that's direct. That says that I see that that's what is happening. And let me help you to see that that's what you're doing,
Right.
because that can be an opportunity for that person to learn.
Yeah, microaggressions could be pretty tricky because even I can see even being direct. I'm not sure I understand, or this is how this made me feel when you said this. Can you confirm it? The person who is acting out the microaggression can very easily say, well, that's not what I meant, or that I didn't intend for you to feel that way. So it almost kind of brushes it away, right? But the fact that a microaggression can be unintentional,
Intentional, right?
whether you intended to do it or not, you said it, this is how I feel, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page here.
Right.
So for children who haven't yet developed that language, first of all, to say, to validate what they heard, sometimes did I really hear that? Or maybe I should let that go.
Yeah.
What do you think our children, what do you think our young, our fourth and fifth graders can do when they may hear something, particularly when they're in environments where there are disparities with race, disparity, perhaps even with gender in a particular activity, religion. What do they do when they hear things that just might not?
And I think this is why it's important to have the conversation, Gina, so that at an early age, our children begin to recognize what is happening, right? And so, because it might happen one time and they don't realize, okay, that's a slight. It might stir up some feelings of discomfort, but it doesn't connect that, okay, that feeling of discomfort is related to. And that's where having the conversation with our children and asking the questions and really listening, so that then parents and responsible adults can use the opportunity to help our children understand that these things, that microaggressions exist. And I don't think it's mutually exclusive to say we raise resilient children who are aware of microaggressions and who can, call it. And I don't think that's mutually exclusive with being resilient. So I think that both things can exist. That we can have children who can respond to something when it happens and still be resilient and still be able to move on, but be able to address it because they have the language and the awareness, the understanding of knowing what has occurred and how to address that, how to say, I'm really not the race. Like, because one of the most common microaggressions that happens, particularly in these independent schools, is that because we have so few children of color, whenever an issue is discussed that is an issue related to color or culture, then all eyes turn to the person of color in the room. And if that is
Yeah.
occurring, then we need for our children to understand that there is no expectation for you to be the spokesperson for the race.
Right.
So, if everybody's looking at you and expecting that you represent the race in this instance, it is not necessary for you to feel that or for you to own that. You can simply say, I am not a that I don't represent all people of color, and all people of color don't necessarily feel the same way, right? So I can
Yeah.
speak about how I feel and what my experience is, but it's not a representation of all people of color.
Right. Yeah. That is true. That is true. So we're going to be digging a bit deeper into this conversation. And what I'm really excited about on Wednesday is that you will also be giving parents more tools and resources to help their children advocate for themselves around issues of bullying, microaggression, and to how to come out even more resilient. So they're excited. The families at Birch, Wathen, Lenox are really excited to have you there on Wednesday. And our RIISE members, you're invited. You're welcome to join us on Wednesday. There's information here next to or at the bottom of the video. And if you're not a member of RIISE nor a parent at Birch, Wathen, Lenox, we still love to have you. So there's ways to RSVP down below as well. So Delia, thank you so much. We're excited.
Yeah, I'm excited about doing the presentation. The response has been so wonderful in the past when we've done it. And so I'm looking forward to a really spirited and interactive discussion with the parents of this school.
Yeah, no, you get the parents going. And like you said, we've taken this on the road to many of our member schools, and it's continued to be something that parents want to talk about, because nothing is new. These things exist, and we just want to empower our children and empower ourselves. So thank you for joining us today, Lunch with Gina. We will be back soon. And again, check out the RSVP if you want to join us on Wednesday tomorrow. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Gina.
Bye.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.